So Julian and I are going to talk about the baseline of Johnny's and James pieces, which is basically, why do we innovate? Why do we even go into this process? Is it to and obviously the answer is to achieve something, is to innovate what we do, what we offer, not just to do it for the sake of it. And that's what we're going to explore together. So to start with, a few things about Chaucer. So we've been around for a bit over 30 years as a full stack digital consultancy. My name is Pavlos Konstas. I'm heading the innovation practice at Chaucer, which consists of a bit over 40 fantastic consultants that they're focused on delivering for clients, particularly when it comes to setting up the innovation strategy and corporate structures required to enable innovation, as well as helping clients managing the flow and of innovation to actually get to a result, which we're going to talk about more later. And then being design coaches for our clients and preaching design thinking as a means and techniques to an end to enable innovation, as well as helping them blueprint and design products and services. And Julian?
Yeah, hi, it's Julian Jordan. Like Pavlos says, work part of the innovation group within Chaucer. So I run the innovation strategy and innovation flow communities and also our business design community, of which there's a huge amount of overlap because of the need to come up with ideas and then how does that physically impact your business or your function. And we're going to talk to you today about how, in fact, a couple of the questions that have come up, I'm hoping we're going to address in a little while. So if we come to those as we go through, you'll see. But we're going to leave a little bit of time at the end as well to allow you to have some questions.
Perfect. We're going to be using Mentee today to make this as interactive as possibly we can for an online workshop. So you don't need to memorize the code. We will show it again. But when we go into Mentee, if you can go to mentee.com and type that code, you'll be able to answer questions live and to have a good interface that will spark a conversation. So starting, so we are here to talk about ideas, right? And the reason we are here to talk about ideas is because there are many. And there are many ideas. However, not every single idea, and I think James touched on that earlier, is the right idea. So ideas are good, but good ideas are the important ones. And many organizations have taken innovation to be focused around the identification of ideas. And particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a number of organizations that they are rushing this innovation course to come up with these ideas. However, what are we doing with that? And having heard the challenges that both Johnny and James addressed and introduced, the question is: Are we as an organization setting the relevant challenges for our people to come up with the good ideas, so that we are able to actually focus where there is value for us? At the same time, are we actually improving the way that ideas are coming in and the way we test them and the way we iterate on them? Because there has been an exponentially high focus on how do we capture ideas, but not much thought of what we do after that, which is again what this discussion is about. How do we evaluate ideas? How do we make sure that we crystallize and we demystify what's important for us and we get it and we test it and we go with it? And finally, how do we provide timely feedback and communication? How do we move forward with what's important? And a lot of corporate energy is expended on servicing the idea of innovation and preaching innovation, but not actually focusing on really innovating, on really producing something. And regarding challenges that we faced with a lot of our clients, I think we can buckle them up into three main areas. The first is that we simply don't generate enough ideas. They aren't good. The ones that come in, we feel we're missing something. And there are two key elements there. First is the cultural element, that transformational element that Johnny talked about earlier. Have you embedded the right culture in your organization for your people to be empowered and invested in actually thinking about how to take this organization forward? And secondly, has to do with you as an organization. Have you actually set a very close alignment on what's important for you? What are the top 3 priorities that you've set to address in the coming year, so that people know where to focus when they try to think about new ways of doing things? The second is about we generate ideas, but they just disappear in the bureaucracy, in the process. And that's a very common observation. And the reason it's common is that traditional enterprises, they are good at creating processes. And processes are good if they can facilitate an outcome. However, most of the times processes become a bottleneck to facilitating the outcome. And as a result, we lose track of where is what, and people get disincentivized. Idea owners, they fail to have an invested interest in that because they know that this is not going to get anywhere, and all the initial sparkle that an organization may have created is going to go away. And obviously what Johnny mentioned before, and James as an example, the evaluation framework and an evaluation framework, like the one of Idea Drops, is able to address these first 2 challenges. And the third challenge, which I think is more fundamental in terms of approach, of an enterprise approach, is we had a great idea. It was amazing. We managed to fund it. We managed to build something with it, but it didn't actually deliver anything. And then it goes back another step. Are you in contact, in frequent contact with your users, the ones who are in need of what you're trying to come up with? Have you checked with them what they need and what they, in terms of what looks good on paper and what looks good in a committee? And it's more about that user centricity and that cultural and design curiosity that an organization needs to have to be able to develop on the one hand, but develop things that they are, I think Johnny mentioned and James mentioned about the feasible, viable, and desirable. The desirable element is particularly important because something may be feasible, you will be able to do it. It may be viable, you may have the means to do it, but if no one wants it, there isn't actually a value at the end of it. And trying to not to stop the monologue here. So we are going to jump into Mentee, and I'm going to do that on the screen. So don't worry, you'll be able to see the code again. And we're going to see dynamically and your experience. Why do you think ideas fail? And what are the key reasons? But also, why do you think ideas are not getting picked up? And with that, let me go into Mentee. And I'll give you 20 seconds to log into the tool. The code is 9964416. And we're going to capture the answers of these 2 questions first, and then we're going to go back to the answers to have a discussion about. And we strongly encourage you to unmute at that time and collaborate. And so, what are the key reasons ideas fail to get traction in your organization? And this is a word cloud, so you have up to 3 entries per person. Please keep it to 1 to 2 words an entry. That way, hopefully, Mentee's magic algorithm will create something nice that we're able to see commonalities. In case you're not able to access Mentee, let me know. Oh, I see first answer. That's great.
It works.
Yeah. Okay, 7 people so far. I'm gonna leave it open until we go to double digit. We are at
if you can go to mentee.com, MENTI.com.
I'm not able to have a look at the question, so Julian,
No,
thank you for helping out.
Thank you, Johnny. And then the code you should hopefully be able to see at the top of the screen, which is 99 64 41 6. Thanks, Johnny.
Great. So we have 13 people. Let's make it to 15.
Quite as you would expect with the word cloud, the size is kind of indicating the popularity of a response.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move to the second question, and then we're going to come back to discuss the results of this one. So the second question is, why do ideas are not getting picked up and worked on in your organization? And this is a speech bubble. So here you can write a longer response if you need to. It doesn't need to be a one word, but not the whole paragraph either.
Yeah.
Very nice. Already 11 answers. Great. And here, yeah, you can have as many as you want. That's why probably we say 20 already.
I think it was 30 each, yeah. But,
yeah.
Excellent.
Great. Okay. So let's go back into question number 1 and the answers that we've had. Okay. So I see here, obviously, predominantly ownership. And I imagine you're talking about ownership of an idea. Would somebody who wrote ownership, would you like to take the floor to explain to us a bit more of the particular reasons, ownership reasons that you've identified in your organization?
Excuse me. Hi, it's Liz Miller here from DAC Beechcroft.
Hi.
Yeah, from my point of view, it was very much lack of ownership, which I suspect you've realised from the next slide. But it's the drop and run mentality. You know, as mentioned previously, really, people think that they've got a great idea, but they don't want to do anything about actually delivering it. They want someone else to do it for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a very common characteristics, and I think it matches very well with what James mentioned, that Ever said, the fact that, you know, we want ideas, but we want ideas coming together with people that they have the ability and the willingness to devote time to developing them, because as you say, very easily somebody is going to drop an idea on in a survey or an idea drop, or whichever means we launch in a hackathon, because an idea is easy and perhaps you have already thought about it. However, implementing the idea is key, and there are ways that we can empower ownership, which is, for example, as James mentioned, for a law firm, it is freeing up time. And it's not only for a law firm, but for a number of organizations, is, freeing up time for these people and time that is being recognized and valued to be able to develop these ideas is going to enhance ownership, because people will have an incentive to do so, rather than fearing that devoting time to innovation might result in getting a bad feedback or falling below their target, or whatever other concern they may have. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Anyone else? Please, Julian.
I know, I was about to move on to sort of another area within that's showing. Yeah. If there's anyone else has anything on ownership before I jump in.
Yeah, I think we had, was it Aisha? Apologies, it dropped, raised their hands.
Yeah, I think just from my perspective as well, is on the ownership, I can't even remember what I was going to say, to be honest, is that, you know, it is the drop and run, and people don't want to develop that idea any further, but they don't necessarily understand what problem they're trying to solve. They've just got an idea. They don't understand that idea actually needs to solve a problem.
Yeah, and that definitely also ties in to the alignment piece that we talked about, and that's for the organization's front to actually communicate very closely what are the top priorities for the organization, so that people know that, okay, if I am to be creative, let me think about something that makes sense for my company, not just for me. And this way we will be able to generate valuable ideas, not just ideas. So the second one I see here, Julian, correct me if I'm wrong, because I say it's budget, fear of failure, and communication.
Yeah, there's two that kind of show up. There's finance and budget, which are referenced in there. And there's the culture around, not built into the culture, fear, which is kind of the opposite of what you'd want. You know, distracted focus, no platform to discuss. So there's a number of things there that are kind of showing through as somewhere along the lines, the idea of innovation, the idea of culture, the idea of trying things, experimenting, being able to fail and learn from the mistakes is not coming through. And again, that to some extent is tied back to some of the discussion we just had around ownership. It's also tied into finance and budget, because if you don't have that in place, you're going to struggle to actually do much with it in the first place.
Okay.
Can I offer something that appears to be missing from that slide?
Sure.
I'm Steve. I work for the NHS.
Hi, Steve.
So I think not getting buy-in in an organisation is often a key reason. So if you don't get buy-in with the finance, the leadership team, the communication team, that's when I think people, if they don't buy in because there's a lack of ownership, then it's just an idea.
Yeah, of course, and buying is critical, and definitely top-down buying is going to help cascade the message. And James mentioned how the co-CEO of Eversets launched a challenge, and people are incentivized if they see their CEO or the COO being involved and invested and interested in it and passionately communicating. It's going to have a great impact on how they perceive devoting their time. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so we go into the second one because I'm also conscious of time. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to scroll 3 times and let's select one and see. So it says teams are already working on too much and don't know what the priority is. So these is exactly the alignment and the priorities and the right challenges that organizations need to expose to their people to actually guide them on where to focus. Conflicting priorities, lack of ambition, again. And definitely, I see funding and lack of funding, of course, and this is tied to the buy-in that Steve mentioned. The fact that having a leadership buy-in in an innovation endeavor will bring that structure, will bring the necessary funds, will bring that necessary push to make it a priority for sure. So current staff is extended and focused on the full plate in front of them. New ideas are hard to implement in our fragmented infrastructure that we've outgrown. Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, it is, you know, innovation, keeping up with how the organization grows, and by grows also complexities grow, different ways that departments and sub-organizations grow. Innovation needs to keep track with these organizational change, and definitely if one outpaces the other, again we're going back into the different priorities that people have. Okay, so I want to leave some time for questions. So in that case, I will go back into the presentation and very quickly very lightly touch upon the evaluation of ideas. And I'm not going to touch too much on that because Johnny and James did already. But the first and the top one is a textbook evaluation. Innovation, evaluation of ideas and innovation, which is to go through these steps. However, sometimes this becomes a bottleneck. So always our approach is these flexible waypoints. As James mentioned, in Eversays, they had to change that funnel to adapt it to, because things were not working. So the flexible waypoints provide the same structure and the same security, however, allow you to define what's important, at which step along the way you need to send check, and what data do you need to make a decision. For example, a client of ours, instead of an MVP, they have an MAP, which stands for minimal awesome provocation. And it's basically similar to, as James mentioned, like a concept slide aiming to provoke stakeholders to invest time and money into that. And I'm going to pass it on to Julian to talk about matrices and the goals that we need to have.
Thanks, Pavlos. And this slide is very much, it's about the idea filter. And I was going to focus mainly on the middle bit and the last point, but there's something that's come up in all of those comments that you created through Mentee. The innovation strategy, the creation of what your goals are for innovation within your organization, and the metrics you use to apply that and to deliver on that innovation strategy seems to be a big stumbling block for many of you who wrote that down, or you've certainly seen that it has been a stumbling block in the past. You may have got past that point now. So I think there's an awful lot to be done, and this is not the time or place, but there is a lot around setting innovation strategy and your goals and metrics up front. What we've seen and what we've heard, tooling, we've got our big filter, we've got our pipeline, we can set the challenges. One of the things you should be looking at particularly is co-development, co-creation. So this is not a drop and run that both James and Johnny referred to. You're creating a single idea and then just running away from it. This is about taking an idea because you've seen a problem or you think there's something might happen, but leaning on other people to kind of help enrich it and see it from different points of view. The assessment matrix, I appreciate I'm rushing slightly here, just trying to get through some time, but the assessment matrix is something simple that Johnny created early on in the slides, or maybe something considerably more complex, depending on what you're trying to do. And you need to understand how you communicate at each stage of that process. The reward step that James put in for Eversheds I think was really important. And that doesn't have to be a major monetary thing. That could be like a coffee voucher. I know you appreciate it in the office, but you could, like have a voucher to have a free coffee at your local coffee shop or coffee bar. It could be slightly more. It could be something like a small value Amazon voucher. But there's something quite useful about generating enthusiasm because you've got an idea that has gone through to an acceptance point. And again, the whole point of all of this is tying your metrics, your matrix, and your messaging, your communication together very closely so that people can start to see why it's happening, why things might be rejected, and building up that innovation culture as you go forwards. On the right-hand side, we see we've got aims, we've got our scoring, we've got our messaging, but how do we get into momentum? And hopefully this next slide starts to discuss a couple of the points that somebody raised on the chat very early on. Building momentum. We've talked quite a lot about the innovation strategy itself and the measures. The important element here is that even with a robust process, do you know which ideas you're going to back? If you apply the same rigid matrix every time, you're going to get very similar outputs. You're also going to impact that with the bias of whoever wrote it or created it in the first place. So a suggestion here is that your assessment team, and this is the innovation board in James's case, but it could be called, whatever it needs to be called in your organization, a level of diversity is absolutely critical. And that should be not just the people themselves, but the grade they're at, their experience, whether they're new to the organization. Roll them in, roll them out over a short 3 to 6 month window so that they are getting experience and going back to the business and talking about this. It's all about cultural change. It's about generating momentum. So it's really important that you understand different points of view and different opinions, because I could be quite clear that you could put an idea in front of me as a sole view, and I might not necessarily grasp it correctly. I might reject that idea because it doesn't really fit with where my thinking's going or what my need might be at the time, but it might sure as well fit with a 20-year-old who's just doing something new in that stage of their career. So again, this is about making sure that you're listening and taking on different opinions. Equally, in terms of people that you might want to have involved in the board or involved in your innovation itself and managing ideas, so this is moving on from purely filtering the ideas and scoring them, but to actually taking on and doing something with it, is that you need 3 key types of people. You need networkers, and they're often people at a slightly lower level, but they are very well connected. They're the sort of person you can ask, oh yeah, that's such and such in that department, or I was speaking to them the other day, and I went for coffee with this person. And they know a lot of people around the organisation for whatever reason. Also needs the enthusiasts, those who encourage and appreciate new things. So the early adopters, the people who get excited by a new process, a new piece of kit, a new tech, a new app, all those kind of things, who can start to generate positive messages on your internal messaging, whether that's Yammer or some other internal system. Start to talk to people, tell people how wonderful this is going to be. And then you need the influencers, those with the power and the clout to actually make an idea happen. So it's all very well and good that somebody comes up with, so I'll answer that question in a second. It's all very good that the ideas are coming through, but you do need somebody to drive it through as well. So you need to allocate ownership, and these people tend to be a little bit more senior on the influencer level, because they need to have that budget, that clout, that seniority to push things through. Apologies, at lower level, what I meant in terms of organizational structure. So what I didn't pick up on the first 3 bullets is that don't pick your assessment team purely on reputation. Don't go and base your assessment based on one individual who's brilliant in your manufacturing department, or who's brilliant at doing something in finance, or whatever it might be. The reason behind that, they have built a strong reputation of being brilliant at what they do and how they work with things. But they may not be able to see beyond their immediate sphere of knowledge. And actually, real true specialists who are experts are probably more blinkered than a lot of people who've got a broader oversight of the organisation. So the bit that they meant about lower level, go for people who are in their junior or middle management ranks to kind of form your team. And it also allows you, again, it's about that cycling with the culture through the whole thing. Pavlos, could I have the last one? And again, rushing because I just leave a little bit of time for questions. It isn't a plug and play. Innovation isn't a plug and play process for organisations, as we can see. The tool such as Idea Drop, it's brilliant. It helps facilitate things, but it is not something where you can just run in and drop a process and run away. It needs careful handling. It's a cultural thing. It's a people thing. Co-creation, co-development of ideas is really, really important. You need to give good ideas the opportunity to breathe. You need to allow them to kind of grow, pause, come back, and you need to have that culture that allows you to make mistakes and learn from them and carry on. And ideas are the lifeblood of your innovation capability. But if all you're doing is capturing them and failing to act, so yes, you put them in the funnel, you've done a bit of scoring, but if you don't do anything with them, you are simply servicing the idea, the concept of innovation, and not innovating on your services. So that's it from Pavlos and I in a relatively potted time frame. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.